Captain James Reed stood tall despite the cold stares from the 12 members of the Human Defense Council. The large meeting room felt too bright and too quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the air system and the occasional tap of a finger on a datapad. "Play the simulation again," ordered Admiral Wilson, his gray eyebrows pulled together in a deep frown. Reed nodded and touched the control panel. The hologram in the center of the room lit up once more. It showed a ship unlike any in the human fleet. It was larger, with smooth curves instead of the blocky designs currently in use. The virtual ship's engines glowed with a strange blue-purple light as it performed maneuvers that made several council members shake their heads. "This is impossible," said Admiral Wilson, after the simulation ended. His voice was flat. "Your design breaks at least 7 laws of physics as we understand them." Reed had expected this response. He had heard it from every engineer and scientist he had shown his designs to over the past 2 years. "With respect, Admiral, it doesn't break any laws of physics. It just uses them in ways we haven't tried before," Reed said. He pointed to the hologram. "The power core uses a new method to contain and direct energy that." "Enough." Admiral Wilson slammed his hand on the table. "Captain Reed, your service record is impressive, but this fantasy has gone too far." A woman at the far end of the table leaned forward. "The power requirements alone would need a core the size of a small moon. How do you propose to fit that into a ship?" Reed tried to explain. "Dr. Lin, my calculations show that by folding the energy field in on itself using the new Barrett principle, we can." "The Barrett principle is purely theoretical," interrupted Dr. Lin. "No one has ever successfully demonstrated it in a working model." "Because no one has built the right testing apparatus," Reed insisted. "If you would just allow me to." Admiral Wilson stood up. He was a tall man whose very presence demanded respect. "Captain Reed, do you understand our situation? The Vortex Alliance has destroyed 3 colony worlds in the past 6 months. They've pushed our fleet back to the edge of our territory. We need practical solutions, not dreams." The hologram changed to show footage from the most recent battle. Human ships, once the pride of Earth, exploded one after another under the vortex weapons. The alien ships moved with terrible grace, their hulls reflecting the light of nearby stars and the explosions of human vessels. "Their technology is decades ahead of ours," Wilson continued. "We need solutions we can implement now, not fantasy ships that violate the laws of thermodynamics." Reed felt his face grow hot. "If you would just listen." "No, you listen." Wilson walked around the table until he stood directly in front of Reed. "Every expert has examined your designs. Every one of them says the same thing. This battleship is impossible by every measure of science we know." The room fell silent. Reed looked around at the faces of the council members. Some looked embarrassed for him. Others simply looked tired. "The council's decision is unanimous," Wilson said. "Your request for resources is denied. Furthermore, I am ordering you to stop wasting valuable time and personnel on this project." Reed stood frozen. 2 years of work, dismissed in minutes. "Is that understood, Captain?" Wilson asked. "Yes, sir," Reed said, his voice tight. "You are dismissed." Reed gathered his datapad and left the chamber. The large doors closed behind him with a final sounding thud. He stood in the empty hallway for a moment, trying to control his breathing. "That went about as well as expected," said a voice. Reed turned to see Tom Blake leaning against the wall. Blake was a stocky man with calloused hands and intelligent eyes. As the best structural engineer in the fleet, he had been the only senior expert who hadn't immediately dismissed Reed's ideas. "They didn't even listen," Reed said. Blake shrugged. "They're scared. When people are scared, they stick to what they know. What they know isn't working against the vortex." "True enough." Blake pushed himself away from the wall. "Come on, I'll buy you a drink." The bar was called The Last Port. It was popular with fleet personnel, but tonight it was nearly empty. Most ships were deployed to the front lines, leaving Earth's orbital stations feeling hollow. Reed stared into his glass. 17 years in the fleet, 4 commendations for innovative thinking. And now I'm the laughingstock of the Defense Council. You're not the first person with an idea ahead of their time, Blake said, taking a sip of his drink. We don't have time. The vortex will reach Earth within a year at this rate. Blake lowered his voice. So, what are you going to do about it? Reed looked up. What can I do? They denied my request. I can't exactly build an experimental battleship in my garage. No, Blake agreed, but I know someone who might have a garage big enough. Reed stared at his friend. What are you saying? I'm saying that Marcus Green has been looking for a way to hurt the vortex ever since they destroyed Proxima Colony. His family was there. Green Manufacturing, the asteroid mining company. Blake nodded. They have facilities, equipment, and resources that aren't under direct military control. Reed shook his head. What you're suggesting is a way to save humanity. Blake finished for him. Yes, it is. Reed was silent for a long moment. What Blake was suggesting was technically treason, using private resources to build an unauthorized military vessel. His datapad beeped. Reed looked down to see a news alert. The vortex had destroyed another human outpost. 3,000 dead. Set up a meeting, Reed said. 2 weeks later, Reed stood in a massive hangar hidden inside an asteroid in the belt. Marcus Green was a tall, thin man with eyes that seemed too old for his face. Your design is fascinating, Captain, Green said, looking at the hologram. My engineers are split. Half say it's genius, half say it's madness. And what do you say? Reed asked. Green's face hardened. I say the conventional approach is losing this war. I say I'd watch the vortex burn my wife and children along with everyone on Proxima. And I say I'm willing to bet on your madness. He gestured, and the lights came up to reveal construction equipment and stacks of materials. This is everything I could gather without raising suspicions. It's yours. Reed felt a surge of hope for the first time in months. We'll need a team. Small, but the best. Already working on it, said Blake from behind him. Lisa Morris has agreed to join us. Vest Power Systems expert in the fleet. How did you convince her? Reed asked, surprised. I showed her your power core design. She called it elegant. Coming from her, that's like a love poem. Green's expression remained serious. You understand what we're risking. If we fail, it's prison for all of us. Reed looked at the hologram of his ship. In his mind, he could already see it moving, fighting, winning. If we fail, prison won't matter. There won't be any humans left to build prisons. Green nodded slowly. Then let's build your impossible ship, Captain. Outside the asteroid, the stars shone coldly in the blackness of space. Somewhere out there, the Vortex fleet continued its advance toward Earth, unstoppable by any conventional means. But perhaps, Reed thought, it was time for something unconventional, something impossible. 3 months passed like a blur for James Reed. The hidden asteroid base had become home to a growing team of brilliant minds who believed in his vision. Every day brought new challenges, but also new breakthroughs. We have a problem with the power core, Lisa Morris said one morning. Her normally neat hair was messy, and dark circles hung under her eyes. She hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Reed looked up from his workstation. What kind of problem? The kind that could vaporize this entire asteroid. She placed a tablet in front of him, showing simulation results. The energy field keeps collapsing at 60% capacity. If we built it as designed, the first time we powered it up would be our last. Reed studied the numbers with a sinking feeling. This was exactly the sort of fundamental flaw Admiral Wilson had predicted. What if he was wrong after all? What if this ship truly was impossible? What do you think, Lisa? Not what the simulation says. What do you think? Reed asked. Lisa rubbed her tired eyes. I think the Barrett principle is sound, but we're applying it wrong. She took the tablet back and pulled up a different diagram. What if we don't try to contain the energy in a sphere? What if we use a double helix pattern instead? Reed stared at her new design. It was elegant, beautiful, even. Will it work? In theory, yes. In practice, she shrugged. No one has ever built anything like this before. Then let's be the first, Reed said. In another section of the asteroid, Tom Blake faced his own challenges. The metal alloys they needed didn't exist yet. The hull has to withstand forces that would tear apart any known material, he explained to Reed and Green during their weekly meeting. We've run through 50 test samples already. Green frowned. My resources are extensive, but not unlimited. How much more experimentation can we afford? As much as it takes, Reed said firmly. The conventional approach is losing the war. I know. Green sighed. Keep going. I'll find the resources. Blake nodded. I have a new approach. Instead of trying to make a stronger static material, what if we create a metal that can actively respond to stress? A smart alloy that redistributes force across its entire structure. Like a living thing, Reed said, understanding immediately. Exactly. Like muscle instead of bone. Green looked skeptical. Can you actually build this? Blake smiled for the first time in weeks. We completed the first successful test panel this morning. He pulled out a small rectangle of dark metal that shimmered with an odd blue tint. Hit it. Green tapped it lightly. No, really hit it, Blake insisted. Green picked up the sample and smacked it hard against the edge of the table. The metal seemed to ripple, absorbing the impact. Impressive, he admitted. That's at 10% of what we'll need for the final version, Blake said, but it proves the concept. Reed felt hope growing stronger. Maybe they really could do this. Not everyone on the team shared Reed's optimism. After 6 months of work, tensions were high. The navigation system can't handle the calculations fast enough, complained Dan Foster, their software specialist. Even with the quantum processors, we're talking about navigational math beyond anything ever attempted. Then we need better software, Reed insisted. Better software. Foster laughed without humor. Do you understand what you're asking? We need to calculate slipstream trajectories that account for 11 dimensions of space-time simultaneously. It would take a human mathematician 1,000 years to solve 1 second of flight calculations. The room fell silent. This was another fundamental obstacle that seemed insurmountable. What about an eye? Lisa suggested quietly. Foster shook his head. Military AIs aren't advanced enough. I wasn't talking about military AIs, Lisa said. Green's eyes narrowed. You're talking about the banned research. Lisa nodded. Deep learning neural networks modeled on human brains. They were banned after the Mars incident, but the theory was sound. The implementation was just rushed. That's illegal technology, Foster warned. We're already breaking enough laws. Reed looked at each face around the table. We're trying to save humanity. If we succeed, they can put us in prison afterward. I can live with that. After a long moment, Green nodded. I know someone who continued the research in secret. I'll make contact. 9 months into the project, Major Sam Roberts sat in his small office at Earth Defense Intelligence. His job was to track unusual resource movements that might indicate vortex spy activity, and something very unusual that caught his attention. Sir, I've found a pattern, he told his superior, Colonel Davis. Large quantities of specialized materials vanishing from the supply chain. Power cells, quantum computing components, experimental alloys. Davis frowned at the data. Vortex infiltrators. I don't think so, sir. The pattern is too human. These aren't smash-and-grab operations. Someone is carefully acquiring these materials through legitimate front companies, but the materials never reach their supposed destinations. How much are we talking about? Roberts pulled up a summary chart. Enough to build a medium-sized warship, sir. Davis's eyebrows shot up. That's impossible. We track every ship under construction. Yes, sir. That's what makes it concerning. Find out who's behind this, Major. If someone is building an unauthorized vessel during wartime, it would be treason. Roberts finished. I understand, sir. As the first year of secret work drew to a close, Reed stood in the massive construction bay, watching as the impossible ship took shape. The hull was nearly complete, a graceful form unlike any human vessel ever built. Beautiful, isn't she? Blake said, coming to stand beside him. She needs a name, Reed replied. I've been calling her Vindication in my head, Blake admitted, because when she flies, she'll vindicate everything we've worked for. Reed smiled. Vindication. I like it. Lisa joined them, her tablet displaying the latest power core test results. We're at 85% capacity and holding stable. Another month, maybe less, and we'll be ready for full power. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. The three of them exchanged alarmed looks. Green's voice came over the comm system. Security breach. Someone has penetrated our outer defenses. All personnel, implement Operation Blackout immediately. Reed's heart raced. Have we been discovered? Before anyone could answer, the main doors to the construction bay slid open. A man in an Earth Defense Intelligence uniform stepped through, a pistol held loosely at his side. Captain James Reed, said Major Sam Roberts. I've been looking for you. Reed straightened his back, ready to face the consequences of his actions. And now you found me. Roberts holstered his weapon and looked up at the massive ship. His expression wasn't what Reed expected. It wasn't anger or triumph. It was awe. So this is the impossible battleship, Roberts said quietly. We need to talk, Captain. The Vortex fleet has broken through our outer defenses. Earth has less than 2 weeks. He looked directly at Reed. Tell me this ship can fly. 2 weeks isn't enough time, Lisa said, her voice strained. The team sat around the meeting table with Major Roberts, who had just shared detailed intelligence about the Vortex advance. Reed studied the battle maps. The situation was worse than he had imagined. 3 Vortex battle groups had punched through humanity's outer defense line. Earth's fleet was scattered and falling back. What about the core? Reed asked. We're at 89% stability. We need 95% minimum for safe operation. Blake leaned forward. The hull is complete, but we haven't run full stress tests. And the navigation system? Reed turned to Foster. The software specialist shook his head. The AI is learning fast, but it's still making errors in the high-dimension calculations. Major Roberts watched this exchange with growing concern. So the ship isn't ready? No, Reed admitted. We need at least a month, maybe more. Earth doesn't have a month. Roberts pulled up a new hologram showing the Vortex fleet's projected path. At current speeds, they'll reach the moon defense platforms in 12 days. Once those fall, Earth is exposed. The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. Marcus Green, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. What if we don't need to be perfect? What if good enough will do? All eyes turned to him. Explain, Reed said. Your ship, Vindication, doesn't need to win the war in one day. It just needs to surprise the Vortex enough to make them pause, to show them that humans can still bite back. Lisa frowned. You're talking about sending out an untested ship with an unstable power core. I'm talking about taking a calculated risk, Green replied. If we wait for perfection, we'll be dead before we achieve it. Reed felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. What are our odds if we launch now? Lisa hesitated. If the core holds, maybe 60% chance of successful operation. If it fails, she didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what a core breach would mean. Blake. The hull will hold for basic maneuvers. Combat is another question. Foster. The software specialist sighed. The AI can handle simple slipstream jumps. Nothing fancy. Reed nodded slowly, making his decision. Major Roberts, how do we contact Earth's remaining fleet? You're going to launch? Roberts asked. surprised. "We're going to launch." Reed stood up. "Lisa, push the core to 92% stability. Then lock it there. Blake, reinforce the critical hull sections. Foster, program a simple jump directly to the battle line. We don't need fancy maneuvers if we can just appear where they don't expect us." For the first time, a hint of hope appeared on Robert's face. "I have secure channels to Fleet Command." "No," Reed said firmly. "Not Fleet Command. Just the ships in the battle line. If Admiral Wilson learns about this, he'll try to stop us." Roberts hesitated, then nodded. "I understand. I can set up direct communications with the frontline captains." "Good. We launch in 48 hours. The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. The team worked around the clock, making final adjustments and improvements. 6 hours before launch, Reed stood in the newly completed bridge of the Vindication. Unlike the cramped command centers of standard human warships, this bridge was spacious, with smooth control panels and a central captain's chair that seemed to grow out of the floor itself. "She's beautiful," Roberts said, joining him. "Yes, she is." Reed ran his hand over a control panel. "Now we just need to see if she flies." "And fights," Roberts added. Reed nodded grimly. "And fights." Admiral Wilson stood on the bridge of the EDF Courage, the largest remaining human warship. Around him, the crew worked in grim silence. The holographic display showed their dire situation clearly. The Vortex fleet had broken through the outer defense grid and destroyed 3 more human ships in the past hour. "Status of the Pluto Defense Group?" Wilson asked. "Destroyed, sir," his tactical officer reported. "Lunar platforms are our last line." Wilson's face remained stony, but inside, he felt the cold grip of fear. He had been wrong. The conventional approach was failing. Humanity was losing. "Sir, we're picking up unusual energy readings from Sector 7. The sensor officer called out suddenly. "Vortex reinforcements." "No, sir." "The signature is, I've never seen anything like it." Wilson frowned. "Put it on screen." The main display shifted to show empty space. Then a ripple appeared, as if the fabric of reality itself was being disturbed. A brilliant blue-purple light flashed, and suddenly a ship was there. But what a ship! Sleek and graceful, nearly twice the size of the Courage, with a hull that seemed to shimmer with a life of its own. "What in God's name is that?" Wilson whispered. "Sir, we're being hailed." Wilson found his voice. "Put it through." The screen changed to show a face Wilson hadn't seen in over a year. Captain Reed. "Hello, Admiral," Reed said calmly. "I believe you once called my ship impossible." Wilson stared in disbelief. You actually built it?" "Yes, sir. The Vindication is real, and she's ready to fight. What's the tactical situation?" Before Wilson could answer, the tactical officer shouted, "Sir, Vortex battle group detected on approach. 5 minutes to weapons range." Wilson made a quick decision. "Reed, your ship is unauthorized, but I'm not in a position to be picky. Can that thing actually fight?" A small smile crossed Reed's face. "That's what we're here to find out, sir." From his position on the damaged human destroyer Swift, Major Roberts watched in awe as the Vindication moved into position. Even at minimal power, the impossible ship moved with a grace that no human vessel had ever displayed. The Vortex ships approached, sleek, predatory craft whose very design seemed to mock human engineering. Their hulls gleamed with an alien beauty that had become synonymous with death. "All ships, defensive formation Delta." Admiral Wilson's voice came over the comm. "Captain Reed, take position." "With respect, Admiral," Reed interrupted. "The Vindication doesn't operate like a standard ship. We'll handle this our way." Roberts held his breath, expecting Wilson to explode with anger. Instead, after a pause, the Admiral simply said, "The field is yours, Captain. Show us what your impossible ship can do." The Vindication's engines flared with that strange blue-purple light. The ship accelerated toward the oncoming Vortex fleet at a speed that seemed to defy physics. Their powering weapons, someone called out on the Swift's bridge. The lead Vortex ship fired. A beam of concentrated energy that had cut through human ships like paper in previous battles. It struck the Vindication directly. And did nothing. The energy seemed to ripple across the hull and dissipate. "My God," Roberts whispered. The Vindication's own weapons came online. Strange projections that extended from the hull like living tendrils. They glowed briefly, then released pulses of energy unlike anything Roberts had ever seen. The pulses passed right through the Vortex shields and struck the ships directly. 2 Vortex vessels exploded instantly. The remaining alien ships broke formation, clearly caught off guard by this unexpected threat. They regrouped quickly and concentrated their fire on the Vindication. For a moment, the impossible ship disappeared in a blaze of enemy fire. Roberts felt his heart stop. Then the Vindication emerged from the energy storm, its hull rippling but intact, its weapons still firing. Another Vortex ship exploded. "All fleet vessels." Reed's calm voice came over the comm. "Target the following coordinates with all available weapons." Numbers flowed across the tactical display, precise points on the Vortex ships that had never appeared on human scans before. "Sir," the Swift's weapons officer looked at the captain questioningly. "Do it," the captain ordered. Every remaining human ship fired at once, aiming at the points Reed had identified. To everyone's shock, the Vortex shields offered no protection at these precise locations. Ship after ship exploded or drifted dead in space. For the first time in the war, humanity was winning. On the Swift's bridge, Roberts watched as the impossible battleship led the human fleet to its first real victory. He smiled. Admiral Wilson had been right about one thing. This battleship was impossible by every measure of science they knew. But sometimes, Roberts thought, the impossible was exactly what you needed. The bridge of the Vindication hummed with energy as Reed studied the tactical display. The first battle had ended in victory, but at a cost. 3 more human ships had been destroyed before the Vortex fleet retreated, and the Vindication itself had not escaped unharmed. "Status report," Reed ordered. Lisa's fingers danced across her control panel. Power core holding at 87% stability. That last hit caused some fluctuation, but the containment field is compensating. "Hull integrity." Reed turned to Blake. "The smart alloy is doing its job," Blake replied with a hint of pride. "It's redistributing the stress and self-repairing minor damage. But sections 12 through 17 took heavy hits. They need time to fully regenerate." Reed nodded. "And our weapons?" 2 quantum cannon arrays are offline," the weapons officer reported. "The remaining 6 are functional." It wasn't perfect, but it was far better than Reed had dared hope for their first engagement. The Vindication had proven itself in combat. The impossible had become possible. His thoughts were interrupted by an incoming transmission. Admiral Wilson's face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Reed," Wilson said, his voice formal, but with an unmistakable note of respect. "Your ship performed admirably." "Thank you, sir," Reed replied. "I'm ordering all remaining fleet vessels to regroup at your position. The Vortex will be back, and in greater numbers." Reed knew Wilson was right. The Vortex Alliance had never retreated for long. They would analyze what had happened and adapt their tactics. "Sir," Reed said, "with your permission, I'd like to share some technical specifications with the fleet. There are modifications they can make to their sensors and weapons that will increase their effectiveness against Vortex shields." Wilson's eyebrows rose slightly. "Those would be the same modifications you proposed 2 years ago. The ones our engineers said wouldn't work." "Yes, sir," Reed replied evenly. "Those exact modifications." A hint of a smile touched Wilson's lips. "Make it happen, Captain." Wilson out. As the Admiral's image disappeared, Lisa approached Reed. "The core stability is dropping again. We pushed it too hard too soon. Reed frowned. Can you stabilize it? I'm trying, but we need to reduce power output for at least a few hours. She lowered her voice. James, if the core fails during combat. She didn't need to finish. They both knew the consequences would be catastrophic. Do what you can, Reed told her. We'll adapt our tactics to compensate. 6 hours later, the human fleet had regrouped around the Vindication. 17 ships, all that remained of Earth's once proud defense force. Engineers from each vessel worked frantically to implement Reed's modifications, using the Vindication's quantum communication system to share technical data. Major Roberts stood at Reed's side on the bridge as they watched the preparations. The Vortex are gathering their forces, Roberts said, pointing to the long-range sensor display. Our intelligence suggests they're bringing in their heavy units, ships we've never encountered before. Reed studied the data. They're adapting faster than I expected. They've already modified their shield frequencies to counter our quantum cannons. So we've lost our advantage? Roberts asked. No, Reed smiled. We've forced them to change. And when an enemy changes, they'd make new mistakes. He turned to the bridge crew. Lisa, what's the status of the core? Stable at 91%. Better, but still not ideal. It'll have to do. Reed activated the fleet-wide comm. All ships, this is Captain Reed. The Vortex are returning with reinforcements. They've modified their shields based on our last encounter, but that's exactly what we wanted them to do. He nodded to Foster, who sent new tactical data to the fleet. They've shifted their shield harmonics to a higher frequency band. This creates a new vulnerability in their lower aft quadrant. Adjust your targeting parameters accordingly. The fleet acknowledged, but Reed could sense their uncertainty. One victory hadn't erased years of defeat. They needed more than tactics. They needed hope. For too long, Reed continued, we've believed the Vortex were unbeatable, that their technology was too advanced. Today we proved that wrong. The Vindication isn't just a ship. It's proof that human ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. Today, we turn the tide. The comm channel filled with cheers from the fleet. Even Admiral Wilson, listening from the Courage, felt a surge of pride. Perhaps Reed had been right all along. The Vortex fleet appeared like a storm on the horizon of space. 30 ships, including 5 massive vessels, unlike any humans had seen before. Their hulls were darker, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and they moved with terrible purpose. Those large ships are emitting energy signatures off the scale, Lisa reported, her voice tense. Our sensors can barely analyze them. Reed watched the approaching fleet with calm resolve. Foster, is the AI ready? Foster nodded. It's completed the calculations for the new maneuver. But sir, we've never attempted anything like this. The stresses on the hull will be extreme. Blake? The engineer shrugged. The smart alloy should handle it. In theory. Reed made his decision. All fleet vessels maintain defensive formation Alpha. The Vindication will engage the Vortex command ships directly. Admiral Wilson's voice cut in. Reed, that's suicide. Even your ship can't take on 5 heavy cruisers alone. We're not planning to fight them conventionally, Admiral. Reed nodded to Foster. Execute slipstream maneuver Theta. The Vindication's engines flared brilliantly. The ship seemed to stretch for a moment, then vanished in a flash of blue-purple light. The human fleet watched in amazement as the Vindication reappeared directly behind the largest Vortex vessel. Before the alien ship could react, the Vindication fired all 6 functioning quantum cannons at the exact same point on its hull. The massive Vortex ship shuddered. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, cracks of bright energy spread across its surface like lightning. The ship exploded in a blinding flash. But the Vindication paid a price for this victory. The maneuver had pushed its experimental systems beyond their limits. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. Core stability at 76% and falling. Lisa shouted, The containment field is fluctuating. Reroute emergency power to containment. Reed ordered. Blake, status of the hull. Blake's face was grim. The smart alloy is at maximum stress capacity. Another jump like that will tear us apart. Before Reed could respond, the remaining Vortex command ships opened fire. Energy beams lashed out, striking the Vindication from multiple angles. The ship trembled under the assault. All power to shields. Reed commanded. Evasive pattern Delta. The Vindication twisted away from the brunt of the attack, but not quickly enough. A powerful beam struck its port side, tearing through the weakened hull. Hull breach in sections 20 through 24, Blake reported. Emergency containment activated. Reed gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shuddered again. Return fire, all remaining weapons. The Vindication fought back, its quantum cannons striking with precision despite the damage. Another Vortex command ship exploded, then a third. The human fleet pressed the attack, using the confusion to target the remaining Vortex vessels. Ship after ship exploded in the cold void of space. Admiral Wilson watched in awe as the impossible battleship, damaged but defiant, continued to fight. All ships, concentrate fire on the remaining command vessels. Follow the Vindication's lead. The battle raged for another hour, the most intense combat any human had ever experienced. But slowly, inevitably, the tide turned. The Vortex fleet, for the first time in the war, broke formation and began to retreat. On the Vindication's bridge, Reed watched the enemy ships flee. Victory had come at a heavy cost. The ship's systems were critically damaged, the power core barely stable. But as he looked at the faces of his crew, tired, injured, but alive, he knew it had been worth it. The impossible battleship had done what no one believed it could. It had given humanity a fighting chance. 1 month after the battle that changed the course of the war, Captain James Reeves stood before the Human Defense Council once again. The same large room, the same bright lights, but everything else had changed. Admiral Wilson sat at the center of the council table, his face more lined than Reed remembered. The war had aged them all, but there was something new in the Admiral's eyes when he looked at Reed. Respect. Captain Reed, Wilson began formally. This council has reviewed the reports of the Vindication's performance in combat against the Vortex Alliance. We have also examined the technical specifications of your vessel, which you were kind enough to provide. Reed stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back. The past month had been a blur of activity, repairing the Vindication, helping implement his technologies across the fleet, planning for the next phase of the war. He had barely slept. After careful consideration, Wilson continued, I find myself in the unusual position of admitting a grave error in judgment. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Admiral Wilson rarely admitted mistakes. Your ship was not impossible. It was revolutionary. And it may well have saved humanity from extinction. Wilson stood up. On behalf of the Human Defense Council, I formally reinstate you to full active duty with all honors and commendations. The Admiral extended his hand across the table. After a moment's hesitation, Reed stepped forward and shook it. Thank you, sir, Reed said simply. Wilson nodded, then turned to address the entire council. Captain Reed's designs have proven not only possible but essential to our continued survival. I propose an immediate allocation of resources to construct additional vessels based on the Vindication's specifications. The vote was unanimous. 3 hours later, Reed walked through the damaged but healing hull of the Vindication. Workers swarmed throughout the ship, repairing systems and installing upgrades based on lessons learned in battle. He found Lisa Morris in the core chamber, supervising adjustments to the containment field. So, she said without looking up from her work, I hear you're a hero now. Reed smiled. Apparently. Does that mean you'll be getting a fancy office back on Earth? Maybe a promotion? Admiral Wilson did offer me command of the new construction program. Lisa finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. And I told him I already have a command. Reed gestured to the ship around them. The vindication isn't finished proving the impossible yet. A smile broke across Lisa's face. Good. The core wouldn't work properly without you around to worry about it. Blake approached them, carrying a tablet with new hull design specifications. Have you seen the latest from the fleet yards? They're already laying down keels for 2 more ships of our class. Reed examined the designs. They're making modifications. Improvements based on our battle data. Blake corrected him. The new smart alloy will be 30% more resilient. Reed nodded, satisfied. Humanity was doing what it did best. Learning, adapting, improving. The next generation of impossible ships would be even more formidable. Major Roberts found them in the mess hall later, sharing a rare moment of rest. He carried a data tablet with a serious expression. "Captain, we've received a transmission," Roberts said, placing the tablet on the table. "From the Vortex Alliance." Reed, Lisa, and Blake exchanged startled looks. In all the years of war, the Vortex had never attempted communication. "What does it say?" Reed asked. Roberts activated the tablet. A series of symbols appeared, followed by their translation. They're requesting a meeting. Not surrender, not terms, just talk. It's the first time they've ever reached out. "Because of the vindication," Lisa said softly. Reed nodded. "We've changed the equation. They no longer see us as primitive or weak." "What will you do?" Blake asked. Reed considered the question carefully. "We'll meet them, but from a position of strength, not fear." 2 days later, aboard a neutral station at the edge of the solar system, Reed represented humanity in the first ever diplomatic contact with the Vortex Alliance. The alien delegate was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shifted colors as it moved. Through a series of translation devices, Reed learned something surprising. The Vortex had never considered humans worthy of true attention before. They had seen Earth's technology as primitive, its defenses as weak. They had expected conquest, not resistance. The vindication had changed everything. A ship that could match their best vessels, with technologies they hadn't considered possible for humans to develop. It had forced them to reevaluate their understanding of humanity. "Your impossible ship," the Vortex delegate said through the translator, "has earned our respect. We do not wish to continue a costly war against an opponent worthy of alliance rather than conquest." It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the beginning of something that had seemed as impossible as Reed's battleship once had: coexistence. 6 months later, Reed stood on the observation deck of the fully repaired Vindication, looking out at Earth below. The beautiful blue planet was safe, for now. The Vortex Alliance had withdrawn its forces as negotiations continued. Lisa Morris joined him by the viewport. "Penny for your thoughts, Captain." Reed smiled. "Just thinking about impossibilities." "Which ones?" "The ship, the peace talks, the fact that Admiral Wilson actually admitted he was wrong. All of it." Reed turned to face her. 2 years ago, I was laughed out of that council chamber. My designs were impossible. Victory against the Vortex was impossible. Peace was impossible. And now I wonder what other impossible things we might achieve." Lisa looked thoughtful. The Vortex delegate mentioned something about their faster-than-light technology having limitations we might be able to overcome. Another impossibility to tackle. Reed raised an eyebrow. "Why not? It's what we do best." Through the viewport, they could see a new ship taking shape in Earth's orbit. Another Vindication-class vessel, but with improvements and refinements. Beyond it, more were under construction. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger, more unified, more innovative. From the doorway, Blake watched them with a smile. He'd just come from a meeting with engineers from 3 different star systems, all eager to contribute to the next generation of ships. Humanity's position in the galactic community had changed forever, all because one man had refused to accept that his battleship was impossible. Marcus Green joined Blake at the doorway. "Was it worth it?" the industrialist asked quietly. "All the risk, the resources, The laws we broke. Blake gestured toward Reed and Lisa as they planned their next impossible project. Beyond them, through the viewport, Earth shone blue and safe. "What do you think?" Blake replied. Green nodded slowly. "Worth every penny." On the bridge below them, Foster was showing Major Roberts the latest improvements to the ship's AI navigation system. Roberts had permanently transferred to the Vindication after the battle, becoming an essential part of the crew. "We're getting reports from the border outposts," Roberts told Reed when he returned to the bridge. "The Vortex are sharing some of their shield technology as a gesture of good faith." Reed nodded, taking his place in the command chair. Around him, his crew, once outcasts and rebels, now stood as heroes of humanity. "Where to next, Captain?" Lisa asked from her station. Reed smiled. "Let's find out what other impossibilities are waiting for us out there." The Vindication's engines hummed to life, the blue-purple glow illuminating the darkness of space. The impossible battleship and the impossible peace it had helped create were just the beginning.